In this episode, we're going to be fitting all of this. Let's run you through everything. Starting with the obvious ones, we have Fogstar batteries. These are their 230 amp hour Underseats, and we have two of them. So this van will have 460 amp hours, which will allow us to do electric cooking, which brings us on to this. And this is our 3000 watt Renogy inverter. It's what we've got in the big van, and it's what we're going to keep going forward, because it's been rock solid in that. We have everything, including upgraded inverter cables to go to fuse boxes. We've got fuse box, Anderson connections to connect this, because it will be removable. We have wiring connections, fuses, terminals. We have extra wiring. We've got switches, all the USB plugs. We also have a Victron 50 amp charger and an MPPT for our solar. Now, we do have to say a massive thank you to Fogstar and 12 Volt Planet, because a lot of this miscellaneous hardware and these chargers were provided by 12 Volt Planet, and then the batteries were very kindly sent to us by Fogstar. We've used these in our big van, we've given them to friends, and we've given them away to you guys. We absolutely love these. We've abused the living hell out of our ones in the big van, and we intend to do absolutely no different with these. It's probably time that we whip this seat out and try and fit one of these under there, because everything except the inverter will be going under the front seats. One of the issues we're now facing is the battery sits too high for a swivel base, but there's a little nub of a connector and like I guess an earth point, but there's nothing connected to it, which is making this rock on the battery. That's meant to be loose. So what I'm thinking is if I take this out, the battery out, etc., cut that off, and potentially cut out some of the flooring and the sound deadening as well. And then the battery should drop probably at least an inch, which would give us actually a little bit of clearance inside. And I think that would be the ticket. So I'm going to go and grab an angle grinder. I'm going to cut that little thread off, and then we'll retest. Inside you've got that, which is just like a little threaded piece. And you can see sort of how high that actually sticks up there. It's sort of 2 amounts of my finger. I know that's an exact measurement, but if I cut some of this out, and then we should be able to drop the battery a little bit lower again. I also need to work out what the hell to do with all these, because that's going to take up space. I could just shove them down the side of the battery down there, but that's a little bit, I don't know, I think it just look a bit shit. So I might whip this base out, have a look at the floor, try and lift some of this floor back and see what's underneath for us to see if there's any gap to shove them in. I don't know. Been hopeful. Cool. So I just need to strip this to pieces and then try and Jimmy do for it in under the floor.
Yeah, I think that's your best bet. But like I say, lose some of that slack, and then whereabouts are you getting the charging wire from the DC to DC, or are you not having one?
No, I've got one. It's going to come through the same slot you've got in the behind the dash up there. So I've been on the phone with Jack from Dougal Adventures. What he'd done is actually taken this apart. So I think that's exactly what we're going to do. He's then coiled this and sort of hidden it. There's a cable tray that runs across the seats, and I think I'm going to do the same. This was only meant to be a chilled afternoon, figuring out where I was going to put things and sort of introducing the video. However, I need to lift the floor up to be able to do this, because I think there's another one of these under there. So I'm debating just disabling the van and taking both seats out. I can get all the cables then run, and then get it all put back together. But I keep avoiding this, and I think I just need to bite the bullet and crack on. So yeah, I'll take this apart and I'll take that seat out and I'll come back to you after that. Well, a little bit later, both seats are now out. So on that side you're left with all those wires, and on this side you're left with this box. Now this does tuck quite nicely into the back side corner of the seat base, so I'm not too worried about that. And then I'm starting to run the inverter wires. So we've got a coil here because I've used thinner, well not thinner, but I can't remember what size I ordered. 170 amp it's rated for, but I'm going to dual feed it because I've got another set of them down there. So I'm just running that across to that battery, and then I'll bring another feed off this battery, and then my plan is to use that Anderson connection that is there. It's a flush mounted one. Will hopefully go in the back of the seat is the aim, because then the inverter will be unplugged really easily. So I think that should do us. Yeah, I guess just start running cables through. One of the next jobs is B2B charger. So for that, under the bonnet and on the transporters, they make this very easy. So all you do is pull this off, and then this panel pops there, and then if I grab a torch and bring you in, Volkswagen can leave you just a perfect little bung to bring it through. Just nicely nestled in that bottom corner is a bung. Now we've already got quite a few bits going through it for lights, but no problem. We will get the DC to DC cable pushed through it. If you take the glove box out, you can see down behind the blower motor that's there, those cables. That big red one, that's the one we're after. If you take that panel off, you can see where it's come through. So we can feed it straight down behind the carpet, under the floor, and then come straight into the B2B charger. So I probably know it looks very chaotic, but that there, inverter cables for that battery, that there, inverter cables for this battery. This is your positive feed to the fuse box, which is going to be on that side. These are your solar cables, because the MPPT is going to be in this side, and then you have your DC to DC cable, which is here. And then you also have, I was confused then, these are your battery link wires, which will go between, because the inverter's dual fed. We've gone slightly smaller, but these are still 110 amp cable rated, I think. So we've got more than enough, because in the back, realistically, we're only running USB sockets and lights. That's kind of the crux of it. It's probably time now to start sitting a battery in, getting it connected, and then slot the seat bases over the top, get the seats back in, and start testing things.
Just felt like it was running thick in here for me. must admit that you love that. You know the worst thing about fakers is when they're crawling home begging. I don't think so.
It may look like I've done loads, but in actual fact I haven't. All I've done is put the seat bases in because I wanted to get an idea. There was a lot of stuff starting to appear cabling wise, and I wanted to get it in, make sure the seat base is all bolted down properly, which they do. So we've now got 230 amp hour, 230 amp hour. We've got cables connecting in parallel, I think. I can never remember which way around parallel and series is. I think it's parallel. Basically we're going for same voltage, increased amperage. So in total we should have 460 amp hour in this. That's 100 less than we've got in Norm, which also runs Fogstar batteries. And to be honest, even with electric cooking, because we sort of road trip, we don't tend to sit still, we don't really struggle. So I was a bit umming and ahhing on whether to go bigger for this and put it under the bed at the back, but it would have meant pulling cables all the way forward, which when we were using it as a van with the seats there would have looked messy because there's no nice way to come across here. So I've kind of ruled that out. And when I saw that Fogstar had these back in stock, it was kind of a bit of a no-brainer. So although we're going to struggle with the swivel base on that, it's literally just going to catch this. So what we'll do is use some washers, we'll space up the Land Rover seat that goes on top of here, and then we should be good to go. This one will not be a problem. They sit ever so slightly proud, probably by ½ an inch of this. You could get it lower. That one is lower because it's cut into the floor. I've cut out some of the flooring. As you saw, that's sort of gone to drop that down. This one I've just put in, so hopefully we should be all right. The last thing I've got to hide is this, which I don't even know what this module is for, but yeah, that should slot just down inside here. But I don't want to do that until I've bolted down this seat base. I've currently run out of ring connectors for the inverter cables. So what we've got here is, if I move this out of the way, you've got positive here, negative here, positive here, negative here. Now, what I'm going to be doing is, because this kitchen needs to be removable, because again, we want to be able to put seats in the back, I need the inverter to be removable. And I don't want to run cables all the way to the back because that ends up being a really long run, and I just don't need it to go that far. So, what I've done is bought these. Now these are wall mountable Anderson connections, rated for, this one's 175, and obviously we are dual fed, so there is a set of cables coming from that battery, there's a set of cables coming from this battery for the inverter, and we'll dual feed the 3000 watt Renogy, which means we will have 2 of these. Now what I'm going to do is make some seat backs to go across here, and we'll do it to match the contour in there. So I'll do a grey or cream carpet and then do contoured inside, and then what I'm going to do is basically mount flush these on the back of here, and what that'll do is basically give us a removable inverter, which should also give us a very neat looking thing. You've got a nice flap on it that comes up, and they're a proper chunky connection. I'm thinking that's the right solution for that. Those cables fit nicely inside there, and we should be good to go. The other thing worth noting as well is I have brought the inverter cables from that seat to this seat. Now what I've had to do is sort of trail this seat's inverter cables round here. So I've got the positive comes from here, round here, loops back with a not too tight loop, and then appears here. That seat base comes straight in, round and back. But because of the amperage draw, and because you want to correctly load across the 2 batteries, I want to keep the cable length the same for that. The lower amperage stuff I'm not too worried, but the high amperage stuff like the inverter, I like to try and match cable lengths so you don't get weird things happening and it sort of overheating one cable because it can pull more. I'm not an electrician, I work in IT. I've done the big van and it's not caught fire yet. They are my credentials. So take what I'm saying with a pinch of salt, do your own research, but this is how I'm doing it. I'm sure there's probably something I've done wrong and something people don't agree with, but yeah, you live and you learn. The next thing is playing a little bit of a puzzle, because this works here. We've got the B2B cable coming from the battery in the front, so that'll need to go into the B2B. So you've got in on that, you've then got ground, and you've got out. So because this is a non-isolated DC to DC, you've got in, ground, out. So essentially what we need to do is make the common ground for the system. Which, to do that, is very simple. All we have to do is take a feed from the Ledger System bus bar and go to the van. Now all I'm going to do is use one of the seat base bolts, because that comes straight up through the chassis, and that will ground out to the mains battery, and then the Ledger System to that as well. We've got it run the same way in Norm, and have good luck with that. Next thing is the MPPT. Now, never connect these to the panel first, because it's bringing in energy at that point, and there's nowhere for that energy to go. So always connect these to your battery first, and then connect them to the solar panel. I think I'm probably going to start with the MPPT. Now, as far as placement, I'm thinking this is probably going to slip in here. I will make up a little bracket or something for it at some point. I'm not entirely sure when, but at the minute that'll sit and rattle, so it certainly isn't staying like that. And I'm thinking that the DC to DC can slip down here, and what I might just do is use a little bit of wooden panel just to keep that upright. Or if I flip it round, it can essentially be connected, and then what I could do is just Velcro it to the side of the, in fact, it's lodged itself in between the base and the battery quite nicely. So what I'll probably do is put some double-sided sticky tape on these, and then that can just slot nicely into the side of that there. Sort of cable tied things up, tidied it up a bit just to see how it would look and how everything would lay, and I think that's roughly the point. Obviously they will sit inside of that seat base, but we now have it all showing on the app. So if I go in and turned on the MPPT, so battery enable charger. So if we give it a second, it should. There we go. So that'll now start creeping up. Perfect. So this panel could do with a wash. It gets parked under all these trees all the time, but we're pulling in 100 watt from a 200 watt panel. And then next what we'll do is if we go in and turn on the B2B, turn on, okay, go back into that. So if I then start the van, we should see that number go up and that one. There we go, bulk charge, give it a second. And engine note changed. It's worth noting we've got a Victron 50 amp heading down the side of the seat. That's probably a bit much for this van, so what I'd usually probably do is go into here and just change output to something like 25. and you can hear the van immediately ease up. But we're now working. We're going to an aftermarket app that I use because it shows both batteries. You can see we're pulling in. So we are now working. The next task is probably to start connecting up all the USB sockets in the back, start getting some lights going, and I've hidden the fuse panel down here. So if ever you need to get the fuse panel, it's right at the front of the seat. Makes it nice and accessible, and yeah, makes my life a lot easier. I hid it in Norm, not intentionally. I put it in before we put the bedboard in, and it made it an absolute nightmare once the bedboard was in and you had the battery rack in there to get to. So yeah, lesson learned. If you're adding or having to change fuses, it's ideal to keep it well accessible. I am missing some ring terminals. I thought I had enough, I don't, so I can't put the inverter cables on this battery. They're all connected to that one, except there's no fuse in that holder there, and all the cables are coming out here. I've trunked all the cables which are in here all the way down this wall, and they're coming across there. Now, annoyingly, I left some of them a little bit short to go right into the back and then come in under the floor, so they're having to go here. But what I'll do is just get a little bit of conduit, and then that'll be hidden and you won't really notice it. And they'll all come round to the front into there. One of the tasks on the board for this week is sorting out a switch panel. Now, I went to a friend's house the other day, and I was basically after a bit of oak to make a switch panel out of. And he had this, which is essentially a piece of worktop, which we milled down and have since turned into a block of about 12mm thick oak. So you've got a lovely grain on it. The really cool thing about this is the fact that actually the worktop was made by somebody that I used to work with, who built a worktop for his house. So it's a hand-built worktop, which has then been milled by a friend, and then I'm going to turn it into a switch panel. It's cool to have stuff that friends or family have made that you can incorporate into a van build. So I need to mill this out because we're going to have 2 switches and 2 USB plugs, and it's going to go on the inside wall about there. I need to do this first, and I'll explain now why, because the dining table, or the table, is going to go on this wall here. So I need to build a little oak shelf, and I need to build the switch panel, and I need to make the table itself. Now, all of that is going to be made out of oak, which sounds really bougie, but wait. We've got this. Now, this is a 3 foot by 5 foot dining table. Mum and Dad were getting rid of this, and Dad offered it to me as asked if I had any use for it. And I wasn't sure what I was going to use it for at the time, except now I'm going to turn the table into a table. But what this allows us is essentially 5 foot by, 3 foot, 2.5 foot of oak. So we can make a table out of it, we can make anything we want to for the shelf out of nice oak. And it doesn't cost us a fortune. Because as we found out when we tried to do the ceiling, well, we knew, but oak's expensive. So yeah, we've got a nice thick dining table, but we need to do the switch panel first to work out how big we can make the table and where it can go. Starting it off, we've got these little gold switches. We got these on Amazon, not that expensive, but they've got a real nice toggle switch feel to them. So we're going to have 2 of those. One is currently already in the van to turn the lights on. So we're going to have one there, and then we've got these. Now, they're little USBs that have a USB-C port and a USB-A port. These were a bit more expensive, and we've only used this in the nice switch panel. In the rest of the van, we've got cheap ones like we've got in Norm. You get them for sort of 4 or 5 quid a go. These I think were £22 for a pair. They're a bit more expensive, but on the switch panel, I wanted it to look a bit nicer. We'll get the ruler and we'll start marking up where they're going to go. One thing I'm guessing we're going to have to do is potentially bore out the inside of this, because when you look at the depth on that, trying to get it to focus, there's a massive depth difference. So we're probably going to have to mill that out to the point that that little neck or ring washer can sit on here. I need to apologise for how tools were treated in that previous clip that you've just seen. A pillar drill is not a mill, a metal drill bit is not a wood milling bit, and a metal step drill bit, or Christmas tree bit, whatever you want to call it, is not what you're supposed to use for this. I should have used a router on the back and a Forstner bit to do these, and potentially a Forstner bit would have done that as well for the switches. However, I don't know what I've done with my Forstner bits. They're somewhere in there. So unfortunately, I worked with the tools I've got. Now, end result's still the same. The front face is a little bit messed up from sitting on the drill press vise, but it needs final sanding, and we're probably going to finish this in Osmo anyway. So as far as the back, it looks crude, but it does the job. The switches sit perfectly flush, and I'm happy with that. Anyone who's building campervan, I do have a piece of advice. We learnt this the hard way. Don't put any USBs in that have lights, because it will annoy the f out of you. So get some without lights. We've got other ones, somewhere in the box over there, that are going to go at the back next to the bed. So you plug your phone in at night, that sort of thing. They've got no lights on either. We learnt this the hard way in our first van, and we had blue tack, tape, all sorts sticking over it, which all started to fail in Italy in 30 odd degrees, obviously. Okay, so one of the first jobs currently I'm going to tackle is getting this switch panel fully wired up. So we've got a switch that's going to go over to the lights in that back corner in the cubby, and then we've got two USB sockets to wire up. Obviously, the light switch is already working. So I'm going to sit and wire all this up. I'll come back to you once it's done. I think we're making good progress. We've got the USBs in the control panel wired in, we've got the USB panel in the back, we've got all the lights wired in now, including the little cubby light in the back corner that you saw me do a second ago. So one of the next things I want to do is have expandable solar. So obviously we've got a 200 watt panel on the roof, but we also have an all powers 200 watt fold out. Now, the other day I put in posts down there. Now, I know what you're thinking, that's a positive and a negative terminal very close together, and yes it is, but I have boots that have arrived somewhere that are going to go over those. There's little rubber collars that I'm going to put over the top, and that'll completely isolate them from being accidentally touched by a bolt, nut, anything, because the whole electrical system is grounded to the chassis. So see, if it touches the seat base, sparky sparky. So I have got covers to go over that. Sun's hopefully going to come out this afternoon, so I want to test how much extra solar we get with the panel. So I'm going to rig these to come through into the engine bay, and then all you got to do is pop the bonnet and plug the solar panel in. I was going to do an XT60 connector in the front bumper, but to be honest, going from this cable to the cable they came with, I'm not really that keen on. So what I'm probably going to do is just run these through the firewall, and then yeah, plug into them in the engine bay. Seems like the easiest option in my mind. Right, so I've just got the inverter mounted in its position, and I'm not going to show you too much because it's attached to the new furniture and I don't want you to see the furniture until the next video. So it is mounted down the side on there. I know it's dark, but I'm sort of doing that on purpose. So it's hidden down the back of the seat, there's plenty of airflow. Obviously I was going to hide it in the wall, but I wanted it to come out of the kitchen. That is now completely hidden really. When the seat goes back and you just don't notice it, black in a black space, perfect. So I think other than the 240, that wraps up the electrical. So I'm going to wait for the sockets to be delivered and then we'll get the last stage of this done. Right, so the way this system's going to go is, I think I've explained in the previous video, we're not doing a ring main, we're just doing daisy chain. So it's going to come out the wall here, go into a plug. That plug's going to plug into the output on the inverter. That'll go and go round into this. Now this is an RCD wall plate, and basically what that does is stops the circuit going over 13 amp, because if you run a ring main you have a total of 32 amp of load. We don't want to go over that because the cable is only rated to 13 amp. So that'll still allow us to plug everything in that you would plug in at home without a problem. So you go into the wall here, come up here, this will then go into this cable then come back out, go down to go to a socket here, and then that goes back out, down, and we'll go to a socket in the back. Now that'll be under the bed for like charging e-bike batteries or anything like that. And then that cable then goes up over the ceiling, round that side, and comes out by the sliding door. Because in the side of the furniture, my plan is to put a single plug face, whatever it is, at the sliding door, which allows us to plug in like our Ninja smoker and anything like that we're using outside. So we'll start getting the plug on and then we'll move around towards the door and get it all done.
Wish I could wear peace like this shirt on my back, then give it away whenever somebody asks. Every time I try, I catch myself reaching for it from someone else. Why is it so hard to hold on to? Maybe I'm obsessed with a hurried rush. Whenever I slow down, I beat myself up. So much time I worrying what could be or what I might have been, second guessing every move I make. I wanna trust myself, love myself, believe in myself like I used.
Before I leave you for this week, I thought I'd just show you the additional solar setup. So this is what we've got. We've got our all powers panel that came with our power bank, and then it connects to these two solar cables that come out of here. Ignore that, I'm waiting for a fuse board so I can tidy it all up. This then comes down to two solar connections. Now with just the roof panel, which is a 200 watt panel, we're currently getting 25 watt. If I plug in this cable, bear with me. So it's ready to plug in, but not yet. You see that is getting 26 watt. If I plug that in, all of a sudden we have near enough doubled what we're getting. Now bear in mind that does seem low, but that is our current situation. The sun is behind those trees at the minute, so yeah, you're not gonna get a great thing. They're pointing the wrong way and that panel is covered by all of that. But what it does show is the capability. So if I go back into history on here, these are just normal days, and then that was with the double panel plugged in all day. Eventually the sun swings around that way and will point perfectly onto these. So you can see just how much of a gain that does give you. So that's the first day I connected it up, and then on day 4 I decided to plug that in and test this out, and you can see that we were out that day so it wasn't under the tree. But yeah, you can see the difference in solar yields, and then bang, So worth doing if you go to a campsite a lot. That sort of thing is a really good addition. Not that difficult to do. I did cables down to the roof, came to 2 battery posts, and then those cables go to those battery posts as well, and then I used a thicker core cable to go from the battery posts to the MPPT. I do just want to say a massive thank you in this video to 12 Watt Planet and to Fogstar. If anyone does want to get a Fogstar battery, we have an affiliate code down in the description below, and we really appreciate you guys if you do decide to go Fogstar. If you'd use that link, it costs you guys no extra, but we get a little bit of a kickback, and it just helps the channel and building things like that. So this week you've seen us do the electrical system. Hope you've enjoyed this video. I know it's probably not the most interesting thing unless you're actually doing it, but yeah, it was nice to be able to cram as much as we did under the seats in there, because so far I've not seen anyone really get that amount of power and that amount of capability hidden under the front seats. Always end up under the bed, and now we've got the entire underbed space free. So winner winner, chicken dinner. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.